All right, guys and gals in the Patreon, we have the privilege today of having Christopher Balzano from trippingonlegends.com, correct? And Spooky Tripping on Instagram. And he is going to talk all about the Pukwudgie, which I am super pumped to talk to him about. Anything you'd like to add on to your introduction as well, Chris?
No, that sounds like a great place for us to start. Anything else I can kind of slide in there as we go?
Perfect. That's awesome. That's awesome. So let's get started with talking about like what is the Pukwudgie? I know it's a cryptid, but kind of introduce what it is.
No, and I think even that is kind of it's difficult to even just call it a cryptid, right? I mean, I've been doing this for 15 years. Looking into these stories and these kind of unexplained occurrences, and then being able to kind of find and put a name on it. And I can't tell after all that time, is it a cryptid, right? Is it a cryptid? Is it a mythical being? Like, for example, would you consider a leprechaun a cryptid, or a cryptid? So it's really, there are so many elements to these diminutive little trolls that are being seen, primarily. I began my research in Massachusetts, right, in an area called the Bigfoot Triangle. But they're seen in every culture. They're seen all across the United States and in Canada. So, it's a real thing. So you want to put it in that cryptid category because it is seen like a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch, or down here in Florida, we've got skunk ape, But there's also this element to it that is magical, that is mythical. And so it really is real. You can't define it. It's ill-defined because it does kind of skate between those two different worlds.
Interesting. So I know that primarily it is associated with southeastern Massachusetts, that area, correct?
Yeah. Well, at least that's where I began my kind of journey. Okay. So, I was working on a book called Dark Woods. And in doing that, I was researching. I've got visual aids.
Oh, nice.
And in researching that, people were giving me accounts of this small, somewhat human-looking like, but obviously not a human troll. And troll or goblin or I actually had one person refer to it as a leprechaun. And these were real things that were happening, right? So it wasn't going back, looking at old cases from, these were people who were looking to me and saying, hey, what is this thing? And there were four that I kind of originally started out with when I was doing the book. Three of them were centered around the Freetown State Forest, which is the subject of Dark Woods. And the other was right outside the Bridgewater Triangle. It was interesting that in doing this research, I didn't know that I'd already actually come into contact with or experienced Pukwudgies before that. Wow. Right? But which I'll get to. But all of their encounters followed the same pattern, all four of those original encounters. And it was, they were in the woods. They came across this little thing almost as if it was by mistake, right? Almost as if it was, they just stumbled upon it.
Okay. Brief
encounter where eye contact was made. The thing disappeared. And usually that was in the form of a dog barking. And so they looked this way, they looked back, and it was gone. Traditional supernatural experience like that. And then, and this was the part that freaked them out even more, days later, they would be in a different location. Three of them were sleeping. One of them was in a parking lot, a dark parking lot, waiting for a person. And the Pukwudgie came back to them.
Whoa.
All four of the experiences, the feeling, and they almost described it word for word. The feeling was that the Pukwudgie was there to tell them to stay away, right? That they were feeling of, and this is the quote that the first person said to me, you might know where I live, but I definitely know where you live.
Oh, man.
Right. And so while the encounter itself was never scary or intimidating, it's not like if you go online. Now, it's important to keep in mind everything that I'm telling you, there was nothing on the internet about Pukwudgies. There were almost no references anywhere to them except for in lore. So if you go now, I mean, obviously Pukwudgies have exploded. There's Pukwudgie beer, Pukwudgie. It's part of Harry Potter.
Harry Potter, exactly. Yeah.
And but then it was nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at an image of a Pukwudgie now, sometimes they've got like huge teeth and claws and snarling and hot and like all this vicious stuff because we can put what we want onto it. But that's not what an actual Pukwudgie is. And that's never what the encounters were like. It was always like stumbling upon something of the woods. Scary or intimidating, but it was scary because it wasn't supposed to be there. It was the encounter afterwards where it came to their house and where they lived. That was the scary part.
That's interesting. So it's almost like it's like you hear about people that are going to investigate like haunted houses or something. It's like something latches on and then it follows them home. That's the scary part to me. It's like, man, I don't want that
and
happening, you know.
And it was marking its territory and it became, you know, so I did my research. I'm a researcher and a folklorist by nature, by trade, because folklorists hate it when you say that. I was reading more visual aids. I was reading Passing Strange by Joe Citro.
Oh yeah, Joe Citro, yeah.
And who is a New England guy.
Yep.
And a great writer, actually. And there was one paragraph in Passing Strange, and he was talking about the Jersey Devil. And I'm not sure if your show's ever covered the not the Jersey Devil, the Dover Demon.
Not yet. Yep.
No,
not
okay.
Yet.
You might have to have me back on for the Dover Demon, but
okay. I'll keep you on the short list, definitely. Yeah.
And so in it, really the only reference is the Dover Demon is not a Pukwudgie. And I was like, okay, you can't leave it like that, Joe. Like, what do you mean by that? Yeah. And there was a little paragraph to what a Pukwudgie was. I was a librarian at the time. I hit the internet. The only reference to a Pukwudgie anywhere was this book.
I've seen that when I go to the library with my kid. Yeah.
Yep.
And
you know, Tommy DePaolo just died a few months ago, just passed on. And it was this kid's book. And when I say nothing other than this, it really was. And, you know, so I got this immediately. I read through it. And at the end of it, it references like all of these stories come from another book called The Narrow Land.
Yep.
So I'm giving homework to your Patreons right now. I'm giving them
which I love. Like I usually have to drag this out of people, and I love you doing this.
So, you know, in reading this, all of a sudden the entire landscape of Pukwudgies opened up for me.
Oh man!
Started to be able to associate what was happening with people to actual lore that had been being told for 500 years. Pukwudgies are not something new. You know, I've gotten attacked before online, especially about calling myself the Pukwudgie guy, which was a name given to me. It's not a name that I took myself. In that, you know, I'm misappropriating Native American culture, and I'm saying I'm an expert on this. And
interesting.
But it is like I've always cited my sources. I've always brought up that I don't own Pukwudgies, right? Warner Brothers right now, if you try to put up an image of a Pukwudgie, you might get blocked by Warner Brothers because they.
Are you kidding me? Do they have it trademarked?
What'd you say?
Do they have it trademarked?
They have a trademark, and I wish I could do my screen share right now. I would show it to you, but there's a friend of mine was doing kind of like a print of T-shirts and banners and stuff of their artwork, and their artwork was of a Pukwudgie, which anything like the Pukwudgie that is in Harry Potter's world, right? It didn't look anything like that image.
Right.
It was actually more true to what a Pukwudgie looks like. And Warner Brothers had tagged the image and blocked them. Or sent a cease and desist order because they a Pukwudgie. So I'm not sure how deep that goes, but I know at least one person who was blocked from printing material for sale because it had a Pukwudgie on it.
That's crazy, man.
Always said, I don't own Pukwudgies.
Right.
I happened to be the person who began with Joe Citro, Lauren Coleman, and me. Bringing the idea and the image and that old lore of the Pukwudgies to the general public, you know. And the interesting thing is, the word Pukwudgie, it's Algonquin, it's used by the Wampanoag, but they don't really talk about it. You know, I mean, I've tried to engage people of the nation with it, and they don't really want to talk about it. So it's not as
interesting
stealing it from them. It's something that I'm not going to say avoid, but it's something they're not overly vocal about. And yet it's that's happening time and time again, not only in New England, not only in the part of Canada that's right above New England, but all across the country. And if you want to extend it, all across the world.
Man, that's awesome. That immediately brings to mind how like the skinwalker is not talked about a lot, is kind of maybe the same thing. Like we don't talk about that type deal, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand part of it, because if you really get into what a Pukwudgie is and what a Pukwudgie might represent, I truly feel that it's a real thing, right? So to start off the bat, not even like a theoretical, it's not a legend, it's a real thing, which is what, against, like you were saying, puts it in more of that cryptid kind of category. I think the history of a Pukwudgie and its association with Native Americans has a lot to do with anything that's unexplained, right? On Tripping on Legends, I go forward with the idea that the majority of ghostly legends are our way to try to understand and process the unknown that we experience, right? Like you have a weird experience, or there's a phenomenon that happens in a location. People can't understand it because they don't come in contact with ghosts or spirits or monsters every single day. And so they fall back on folklore that they've been told their whole life.
Right.
Give it a backstory. And if you look at what, I mean, even in reading the little kid's book, you really understand that these Pukwudgies are blamed for everything that goes wrong, right? If your house burns down, a Pukwudgie did it, right? If your child gets lost in the woods and accidentally dies, you know who killed it? A Pukwudgie. And what it does is really take several different legends. The biggest aspect, and the first aspect that I ever experienced firsthand with Pukwudgies, is this phenomenon known as Taipaiwunkas.
Okay, interesting.
Which we call ghost lights, right?
Ah, okay. Now I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, and here in Florida, they call it the Vespers.
Oh.
Another word for spirits, right? And these Taipaiwunkas are ghost lights that are the souls of people that the Pukwudgies have killed, right? And so they're used to lure people into the woods, or to lure people to isolated places, to cliffs, and then kill them. And then those people become the Paiwunkas themselves. And so that's the phenomenon that's so often associated with. So when people tell me that they see something, I often ask, well, was there anything else? And I'll get that ghost light Taipaiwunka story that follows it up.
Man.
Okay, this might be a real Pukwudgie experience.
Wow, that's awesome, man. That is, oh boy. So my background is I grew up in Western Mass.
What town?
For Northfield.
Okay, so just I'm from Metro Boston, so I wasn't listening when you said the specific town, because it's after 495, it's all just Western Mass.
Well, I know it's like we're too busy messing around with dragons out there. We get scared of Boston, right? So yeah, I totally get it. We don't go out there. But I'm just curious: are there sightings of these guys ever in Western Mass that you've heard of?
Berkshires, I can say for sure.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
I've heard of several different encounters in Amherst.
Oh man, that's that's 45 minutes south of where I was. That's cool.
Yeah. So I mean, it's one of those things where if that second encounter doesn't happen, people blow it off, right?
Okay.
Just because it's easy to, and the majority of people will do this. It's easy to just think it was a trick of the eyes, or you didn't really see what you just saw. Like, was there really like a little person hanging out right there? Like, yeah. So I think that unless they get that second encounter, and I think that has a lot to do with the intent of the witness, right? Mm-hmm. That person is the kind of person who spends a lot of time in the woods. They're going to get that second encounter. But it's not all ghost lights are Taipaiwunkas, right? And not all things that you see dark in the woods are Pukwudgies. So I think a lot of people dismiss them and don't make the connection, and then of course don't report them to me.
Man, I for some reason I love how there's like this these lights are a validating thing for the encounter. Like, that's such a cool thing. I don't know what it is, but I really like that. That's awesome.
So my very first encounter, which was not in the Triangle, but was in New Hampshire. Wilton, New Hampshire, there's this really cemetery called Vale End. And the primary legend in Vale End, there's two of them. One is of a guy whose daughter died. She was buried in the cemetery. He dies. Her husband is like, well, don't have to satisfy him anymore. Uproot the daughter to bury her in the family plot. And so this guy wanders the cemetery looking for his daughter and like looking at the headstones and stuff like that. And the second is of a woman in blue who she's buried. Her name's Mary Ritter, and Mary Ritter #1 is buried here. The guy buried another woman named Mary, and
Okay.
so there's two Mary Ritters buried.
Oh,
and
no.
Glows blue. She walks through the cemetery blue, and so people actually go to that cemetery to try to experience that. So I don't know if you know who Fiona Broom is. But she's a kind of old school famous, popular paranormal writer and investigator.
Okay.
And she's actually the person who came up with the phrase Mandela effect.
Real? Oh, cool.
She used to have a great site. I don't even know if it's still up, called Hollow Hill. And Hollow Hill, she said, it's an amazing cemetery. Those legends are really cool, but there's something dark that lurks among those headstones.
Ooh.
And at the time, she described it as Grover on a bad day. Years later, we're able to compare notes. And I said, Grover on a bad day, like, describe it to me. And essentially, she described a Pukwudgie that had thick red fur. And so I'm like,
whoa.
Not Grover. And she's like, who's Elmo? Didn't have kids. Didn't get that reference.
Oh, yeah, right. That's funny.
What had happened was she had gone out there and experienced these several times, and people were known to be attacked by them, right? Later, confirmed that these are Pukwudgies. Like, this is a Pukwudgie kind of encounter. And she talked about how one of the people she was with had died a few days after visiting the cemetery. She attributed to these small creatures, these small Grovers that were in that cemetery. And so she took down all the material. But I remembered it because I had kind of been obsessed with that kind of legend at the time.
Yeah.
On my bachelor party, we went to, if you know Spider Gates, if you're from Massachusetts, we were going to look into Spider Gates, and we got thrown out by the cops immediately.
Whoa. Okay.
And, well, you know what? Like, Wilton's not too far away, man. Like, why don't we go there?
Okay.
And I didn't tell the people I was with the Grover weird creature that attacks them legend, which I probably should have, but I told them the rest of the stories. They were up for it. We went there. Looking around the cemetery a little bit, this is kind of even before I was investigating. So I was doing much more of what I do now, which is legend tripping, right? Going and trying to experience whatever it is. And I saw a little flash of light in the woods, right?
Ooh.
And so I'm like, something happening, go there. And so we kind of all walked out there, and we got to where the location was. And then all of a sudden we saw a little deeper in the woods, another little poof of light, and then it hovering. And so we're like, go there. And about minutes into it, I realized we're being lured into the woods.
Oh, geez.
Like, I don't know what's going on, but I know right now I feel like I'm being hunted.
Oof.
Let's go back to the cemetery.
Yep.
Right? And we start making our way back, and the lights are going off all around us to kind of like bring us someplace, but we're ignoring them. We go back to the cemetery. You would have thought we were famous, and the paparazzi were going crazy because we're in there in the middle of the cemetery, and it's like flash bulbs. There are so many of these tie-pie all around us trying to bring us back into the woods. Didn't actually see a Pukwudgie, but I knew later, doing more research, like, oh, those creatures are Pukwudgies. We were seeing those balls of light. And then we experienced the third thing that's kind of part of the Pukwudgie trifecta, which is shadow men, right? They're often, and they're the part that people forget about, but more times than not, during an area or in an area where people are experiencing Pukwudgies, almost always there's a specific kind of shadow person who's there, right? And it's interesting because in the Narrow Land,
okay,
they're referenced early as dark people, right? And then as the stories become more, as Elizabeth Reynard gets more into the Christianized versions of these stories, they're called the devil with a capital D.
Oh.
So the devil sends the Pukwudgies out, which doesn't
Yikes.
But I think it's trying to explain this fact that these shadow men that only take on the role of watchers in this situation are often seen at the same place as Pukwudgies, right? So I don't think they're commanding them to go out. I think they're observing the phenomenon themselves. And so as we're leaving that cemetery, there was these 2 headstones and then like 5 little headstones. You could tell a whole family got wiped out, right? So we stop and we're observing these. And as we're kind of just watching it, a shadow comes out from the ground and begins to come towards us.
Oh, man.
Not like human form, but like the best way I can explain it is like, we call it Momo, right? That kind of...
Yep.
But not necessarily form and like features and stuff like that. And that was when we decided to leave the cemetery and collectively said we should have just gotten some strippers. So,
but well, this is a much better story.
It is. Well, no one really wants to tell their stripper story, but
no, definitely not. I have a question. I want to make sure I get a question from Greg from Patreon in here.
Yeah.
Can you, so is it exact, when was the most recent sighting of the Pukwudgie? Are there still recent sightings of the Pukwudgie today, or did they cut off after a certain time?
I don't think they cut off at a certain time. Let's put it this way. I got an email yesterday about someone who's saying they're experiencing it right now.
Oh, wow.
So these are not something of lore. These are something that are still common today. Now, the interesting thing about it is that people in different cultures will call it different things, right? So who is in Las Vegas, because I got a report from Las Vegas, they might not call it a Pukwudgie, right? And they might not make the connection to any of my research until they see something and go, wait, that's kind of what I experienced. What's a Pukwudgie? And they go, that's what I experienced. So I think that these are constantly happening. They're just not necessarily identified as a Pukwudgie. And then, of course, if you look through a lot of the research that's out there, my work has been copied and pasted and copy and paste and copy and paste much that the stories don't necessarily make their way to me anymore.
Interesting.
Because I'm not necessarily, the most popular, or even though I probably have the most experience with them, people find other ways. So I hear about it all the time. People will say something, or I'll hear it secondhand. But I was really surprised that I was like, oh, going to be talking about Pukwudgies on Saturday, and then Friday afternoon I get another report from
That's awesome.
Ohio.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, so the whole field of cryptozoology is getting very, very, there's a lot of stuff going on in it right now, but you also, I was asking around, okay, who's the guy to talk to? Who are, the top individuals to talk to about this? And Alex Petikoff right away was like, boom, this guy, get on it, and I was like, yeah, I respect what Petikoff has to say. So, I mean, that's why I contacted you. And your articles on the website are you've got a lot of them about the Pukwudgie or the Pukwudgie. There's one about it was so detailed. I think it was talking about myths and legends, but it was from about 10 years ago. But man, it was so well done. Good job, man.
Thank you. Yeah, it's probably I think it's called Pukwudgie's Myth or like that. And that's on it. That's the basis. People keep telling me, write a Pukwudgie book. And I'm like, that's the basis for the majority of the research that's on the internet. So whole sections of that were originally cut and pasted and put into Wikipedia. It just Wikipedia about, which was fine for me because they were linking to my website. So I was getting
that's cool. Yeah,
tons of traffic from it. And about 2.5 years ago, Wikipedia took out every reference to Pukwudgies being real. So Wikipedia now, they treat it as if it's a legend and a literary thing, right? So they talk about the Song of Hiawatha and stuff like that, but they don't reference anything that might actually be real. They don't mention the Bridgewater Triangle and all. They sure as hell don't reference me anymore.
Wow.
And, you know, once again, as a folklorist, I have to say, I don't own Pukwudgies. Like, it's not me, but those, you still see those fragments, almost word for word descriptions of encounters. It's always interesting to read an article by some 23-year-old person writing for the Bethesda Chronicle, and it's my story. You know what I'm saying?
You're like, no.
Experience. But like, as I said, like as a folklorist, you have to go like, that's great. Like I have the opportunity to see how it has evolved, right? And to see that just like those Wampanoag 500 years ago, everything we want to blame on something that we can't explain is still making its way to Pukwudgies.
Wow. That is so wild. I would have so many conflicting emotions if I was in your spot. But I mean, it seems like you're handling it as best you can, definitely.
Well, you know, it's funny. I live in Florida now, but I'm from Boston. And right before I moved down to Florida, I took a ghost tour of Boston. Right?
Oh, cool.
I was like, let's go on a ghost tour of Boston. I'm like, I know all these stories, right? And I'm sitting on a bus, and it's going through Kenmore Square, where Fenway is, for those who don't know the area.
Exactly.
And literally, the bus driver is telling me my personal experience.
No way.
One of the buildings, right?
Are you kidding me?
And it's wrong, right? It's wrong. And I'm observing, and I'm listening to this, and I'm kind of like laughing, and I'm watching the people's reaction. The people love it. That's the kind of thing where I almost said something. I'm like, you know, you got that story wrong. And I thought, and I did, because I thought this is a one time moment where these people on the bus can actually like get the story from the person who and so I own that. Like, I feel like I own it. Like, someone wrote that same experience in a book, and I ripped her. I was like, how can you possibly use my personal experience about Pukwudgies? Totally different story. You know what I'm saying? Like, even the stories that I have personally documented, I feel are part of something bigger, and so the world can have them.
Did you bring it up to the bus driver, or like what did you do?
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah. We had a little Q&A right there.
Oh man, how cool!
In the shadow of Charles Gate, the Charles Gate Hotel, one of the most haunted buildings in Boston. I'm like, you what really happened, because it's actually even freakier than this guy is talking about. And
wow.
People had that once in a lifetime experience of actually having the ghost story come alive for them with a witness right there.
I love it. I love it.
Shoot me any money though afterwards. So what are you gonna
do?
No. Still waiting for money from J.K. Rowling and that guy, but I'm not holding my breath.
Oh geez. Could you imagine? Well, okay, so like let's think about that. So Rowling would have had to come up with the creatures. Is it I'm bad at pronunciation. I'm just gonna say that it's the North American Harry Potter house.
Livermore.
Yeah, it's weird.
I've never heard it actually spoken. I've only seen it written, but I think it's Livermore.
So you have to assume that Rowling came up with that idea, and you have to assume that since you're the main guy that has had the Pukwudgie information on the internet, she probably used or looked at some point, stuff.
Right? Like my research, or although the story is very different, and you know, I remember initially being, especially from people within the Bridgewater Triangle.
Okay.
Part of it was defensive for me, like, hey man. Part of it was just defensive of the Wampanoag tribe.
Right.
She totally stole this, and I now knowing the full story of it, and the full story of how this Pukwudgie kind of plays into the lore of the world, it's not horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, the Pukwudgie changes enough. It's much more human looking. It is just portrayed as like a magical grumpy troll.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I remember the
different than the trolls that are I should say, in her world, the goblins that are seen. But he's helpful to the very first witch that comes over from England.
Right.
and they become best friends, and he helps her survive that first winter and stuff like that. And I'm like, that kind of just sounds like you take in the Wampanoag tribe and Squanto, not Squanto, it's Squanto, right? The first that they come across and Metacomet, and being like, we're just
Right.
Pukwudgie instead of an actual Native American, instead of an actual Wampanoag.
Oh, yeah. Right.
But in going back, I wonder how deep it is, right? Because if you're a fan of the books and not the movies, I believe it's in Chamber of Secrets that there's this story of at the Weasley house, Mom Weasley, whose name is escaping me, is
And
like,
mine as well. Yep.
before you guys have dinner, you have to get rid of those, and they're not called puck. I think they might be called like boogers or something, right? Or
Something like, yeah.
these trolls or goblin type creatures that are sneaking into the property, right? They've got to take them and throw them back over the fence.
That's awesome.
But the problem is kind of like their version of like, we can call it like a cryptid gardening, right?
Right.
But the problem is that they'll come back. So what you have to do is you have to pick them up, shake them to confuse them, and then throw them over the fence, right?
That's funny.
It's taken from this. You know what I'm saying?
Is it really?
Yeah, I mean, when
No way.
Mashop, who is the Wampanoag creator god, when the Pukwudgies first start getting overly mischievous, because they're originally portrayed as kind of just tricksters, right? Then Mashop gets a girlfriend and goes away for a bit. And when he does, they become evil. And that's when they start kidnapping people and setting villages on fire and killing people in the woods. But they're originally just mischievous. And so the Wampanoag go to Mashop and say, hey, you're our god. These guys are good. What are you going to do for us? And what does he do? He takes handfuls of them, shakes them to confuse them, and throws them all throughout New England.
That's so cool,
right?
man.
That's the same story, right?
Wow.
J.K. Rowling took that. So whether that's a bigger type of story in folklore can be argued, but it's just interesting that like then going back and reading Chamber of Secrets, I'm like, wait a minute, that's
so cool, man. I love it.
Yeah.
The other thing about that is and this is just a side note, but it's like it's funny how they made Mount Greylock like the site of it, and like you can't see it because I've hiked up Greylock before. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool, But,
yeah. And a lot of those New England locations are part of that initial lore, which I think is really interesting. Because, it sets I guess even maybe a very England thing. It sets the center of the New World in New England, which is where it should be.
Totally, man. yeah. You never can stop being a New Englander if you grew up there. That's for sure.
So this is an interesting, another one of those borrowed or shifted folklore that you see. I love this story because it's the very definition of how much Pukwudgies fulfill what we need. So probably about 10 years, I think it's almost 10 years ago now, I was on the now defunct television show Paranormal State.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I remember that one. No way.
So I remember, hey, I was like a mile away from where I am now. I remember I was driving and I got a phone call from a girl, and she's like, I'm having an experience. Can you help me understand it? And even at that point, I had gotten a pretty good, like, I know you're a TV person within 5 minutes, right?
Okay.
She's telling her experience, and I said, can I stop you for a second? I'm like, what TV show do you work for? And she's like, okay, to be honest with you, I work for Paranormal State. And I'm like, all right, don't like cut the crowd. Like, what do you need? What are you looking for? Like, whatever.
That's funny.
And so I proceed to have an interview, maybe like a 3-hour interview with her and the producer of the show, who was one of the people. Well, the only episode of it I ever watched was the episode I was on.
Okay.
They tape record it, and they do this whole, it was their season premiere. I think it was season 3 premiere about this case in Massachusetts, and they think it's a Pukwudgie. And so at the end of the episode, for the last 20 minutes, they bring in the expert, me, how that happened. And I'm on a speaker box, right? So
okay.
it's interesting because like Michelle Belanger is asking a question. I never talked to her, but she asks a question and then I answer it on the speaker box, right?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Obviously,
Yeah.
like a setup, which is fine. Like it's TV, whatever.
Yep. That's how you do it. Yeah.
Right. So our interview and this interview ends with how do you get rid of a Pukwudgie? Right?
Ooh.
So I say, how do you get rid of a Pukwudgie? Well, you don't, right? Like Pukwudgies, for all intent and purposes, don't really want to be with you. If you ignore it, it will go away, right? Don't engage, it'll go away. It's oftentimes just a warning to stay out of a certain part of the woods. There's no magical thing. There's no put salt here. There's no cast this spell. There's no do this. It just go away, you know? The interviewer asks, how about planting a rose bush? A strawberry bush. So there are parts of the story that are both like in this story and then other parts of the lore that have to do, so you can see it right here in that picture. They're eating strawberry bread.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That have to do with the fact that Pukwudgies love strawberries,
Mm-hmm.
and that stealing the strawberry bread was part of the reason why Mashop finally goes out and tries to kill the Pukwudgies.
Oh. They're
killing people, they're setting fires, they're kidnapping people. Like, go handle it. And he's like, I'm really kind of lazy right now. I'm smoking my pipe. They strawberry bread. Those things are dead. And then he goes out and essentially has his whole family wiped out.
Wow.
So I'm like, well, I don't get like plant a strawberry bush. Well, I don't see how that would work, because what you're doing essentially is creating something that's going to lure them in, right? Like Spirits 101. If you don't want an alcoholic ghost in your house, don't leave alcohol out. If you don't want weird, creepy spirits that are kind of lower level spirits in your house, don't leave food out at night. You know what I'm saying? Like clean up your kitchen, like get rid of that.
Yep.
Like it's a lure to people. I don't know why you would plant something that would lure the thing in that you want. But also, there's no reports of it not working, right? So I said, if it makes the homeowners feel good,
mm-hmm.
plant a strawberry bush. That's fine. They wanted the visual of everyone out there, you know, like planting the stuff and
right,
like
yeah.
The episode airs.
Okay.
And the conversation goes like this.
Oh no.
How do you get rid of a Pukwudgie? How do you get rid of a Pukwudgie? Plant a strawberry bush. Okay.
Cool.
So we edited the conversation.
Yeah, awesome.
Which is great, right? Like it was but within a month, I started to see the entire internet shift to this idea of, if you want to get Pukwudgie, plant a strawberry bush.
That sucks.
That it's now part of the lore, right? It's now part of
no. Yeah.
People who haven't been doing this research for years, they just assume it's part of the lore for 600 years that get rid of a Pukwudgie is a strawberry bush. And that is the point that I'm like, you know, I'm giggling because I know what the truth is.
That's horrifying. Yeah.
I can observe it and go, this is amazing. I'm watching hundreds of years of stories shift on something that's going viral.
That is so cool, man. That is a really cool observation. Question. So you've already gone over some books. I would assume that you are saying that those are like your top books to look at regarding Pukwudgie. And please, at this time, like go over, like if you want to, the books that you have written regarding. I know that there's like 2 books that. So
I've got. I mean, in terms of Pukwudgies, I've got Dark Woods. I know this is backwards, but you can read it anyway. Dark Woods.
Yep.
And then of course, Ghosts of the Bridgewater Triangle, which both touch upon Pukwudgies because they're crucial. This is the book really that launched Pukwudgies into the mainstream in terms of exposure. Like I said, Passing Strange is not only, if you are into, you know, definitely New England things, but they're kind of from everywhere. This is kind of the book to go to. It's a great book anyway, but it has like a section that has the Pukwudgies and the Bridgewater Triangle as well. Obviously the kids book, and it's a quick read, and you can read it with your kids.
I should get that for my kid. Totally. Yeah.
The Narrow Land is dense. Unless you're a folklorist and you really like reading like the original text of tales.
I love it.
A little bit dense. But there's another book that kind of was my driving force for years. Actually, another really good book is a book called Iroquois Supernatural, I believe it's called. Is of the Iroquois in Canada, and it mentions Pukwudgies, right? It's one of the only books of that time that mentioned them. Then there's someone who got to it before me. And this is going to be, if you've got a Midwestern audience, this is going to be the book that they're going to want to look into.
Okay, so this is cool because guess where I moved to?
Where?
Des Moines, Iowa. So go
ahead. I was going to say, yeah, you were in Iowa. Now, me being arrogant because I'm from Boston, and B, more arrogant because I'm from the East Coast, I imagine it goes New England, the Midwest, California, right? So I've got that. So you must only be like 5 minutes away from Indiana.
It's like, well, here's the thing. It's all corn and it's all Field of Dreams and pigs. So, Right. So how far away are you from Indianapolis? It's a good little trip. 8 hours-ish.
That's nothing.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm in Florida. In 8 hours, I'm not even out of the state. So
yeah, that's true.
This book predates me.
Okay.
And became an obsession of mine for years until I was actually able to make a trip. I think I'm the only person in the world when people would say, "Where's your dream location to go to?" I'd say, Indiana. Indiana. The only person in the world ever say that. And that's this book right here. So I know it's reversed, but it's
wow.
But it's the Pukwudgies of Indiana.
Oh.
The only other in-depth and Paul Startzman's not with us anymore, so I was never interviewing. I was able to interview someone who knew him well.
Oh wow!
It talks about a place known as Mound State Park in Anderson, Indiana, which is a little bit outside of Indianapolis.
Okay.
And it is not only the other major Pukwudgie location; it's the key to understanding what a Pukwudgie is.
Wow.
So we made a road trip a few summers ago, Tripping on Legends. I believe it was the summer of 2017.
Okay.
Or 2016, I can't remember. We went up the coast. We did all these legend trips in North Carolina, cut across to visit Point Pleasant, because you have to when you're on the road.
Yeah, totally. Yep.
To west.
Yep.
And then made our way to Indiana to Mound State Park. And we happened to come across a doctorate level, I don't think she was a doctor yet, but a doctorate level anthropologist who was working at Mound State Park. So if you're at park and you've got a doctorate level anthropologist working there, there's something going on, right?
Oh yeah, totally.
We talked about the Pukwudgie tours that they go on, that they actually have in the park, especially during Halloween time. And then we took some interviews with people who had actually had experiences in the park with Pukwudgies. This is all on my social media, so you can kind of see this stuff.
Okay.
And then she explained to us the importance of Mound State Park and its location. And the short story of it is, if you know Indiana is called the crossroads of America, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
It's kind of where East meets West.
Yep.
And it's not just a cute little nickname. Anderson and where these mounds are is aligned perfectly with these lunar cycles and these star cycles.
No.
To be a place where maybe, as the cliche thing is, the veil gets thinner, or maybe at certain times, right, like vortexes or dimensions open up or whatever. This place was considered ridiculously sacred, not just by the Native Americans who lived there. So you had Iroquois coming across from Canada to meet for 1 week every year.
Oh, man.
You had Wampanoags. You had Denver Indians. You had Biloxi. You had Miami ones. And by Miami, I mean the tribe, not the location. You had ones on the West Coast, but not as much. All coming to Indiana to to get that energy, get that vibe, share stories, share things, bury their most sacred people, right? Not always the great leaders, but people who were considered mystic and powerful when it came to medicine were buried in these mounds in Indiana. And so we're talking, and I'm like, okay, well, where does the word come from, right? It's an Iroquois word, right? I'm sorry, not Iroquois. It's a Algonquin word that means kind of translated to little people. And I'm talking about this stuff. What we found kind of to be true is these Pukwudgies are seen all across the country, right?
Man, that's crazy.
And there's no word for them, right? Or different tribes would have maybe different words. But how do you talk about that if you don't share a language, right?
Oh,
and man. So the word Pukwudgie caught on with all of these different tribes as an umbrella term for small, creepy thing in the woods that messes with us. So the Miami Native Americans went back, and that's why there are references in their culture to it. And the Denver one, the Dover ones went back, and that's why there are references. And the Iroquois went up. And that's why they talk about Pukwudgies.
Wow.
Indiana was really the word, that the place where Pukwudgies kind of, became a word that was in the lexicon of all of these different tribes.
Awesome. Dude, that is really cool. Are any of those books hard to find now? I find some of these books get super expensive, but are they pretty?
Yeah. Well, my book is not hard to find, but you might regret it once you read it because it's horrible. The grammar is really ridiculous. It was the first book I ever wrote.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, I've been there. Yep.
This would probably be the hardest one to find, and it's
really
not that hard. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, all of these are kind of readily available. This one, I initially bought 5 copies from the bookstore at Mountain State Park.
Oh, you'd have to. Yeah.
Because, I was like, and it was like $5 instead of like the cover price. So I was like,
yeah, it's on. Yeah.
Which now like I've distributed to people who have helped me with my research and stuff like that.
Nice.
They're pretty readily available everywhere you want to
go. As we start to finish up, I'm curious, are there kind of the other side of that question? Are there top documentaries, things to watch regarding the Pukwudgie that you recommend at all?
Yeah, okay. The only one that I really recommend is the Bridgewater Triangle documentary.
Yeah, which you are in, correct?
Yeah, and I'm not. I don't make any money off it. It doesn't promote me and
right
my stuff, but it is. There's a whole section on Pukwudgies. If you have Amazon,
nice.
It's free.
Okay, cool.
And it's for all of the. I just posted yesterday an old episode of my show, Tripping on Legends, called "Why the Triangle Will Never Make It Big." So it's an hour of me breaking down what no people who get into the Bridgewater Triangle want me to talk about, which is become popular. It's never going to be.
Really?
It's never going to be Skinwalker, like you were referring to.
It's not good. Yeah.
For the past 10 years, I've been approached by literally dozens of production companies trying to make a documentary, an episode of the Bridgewater Triangle, and it never happens. It never comes to be.
Oh, it just falls through.
It just falls through. So it's kind of like for all different kinds of reasons. It's just kind of this mysterious thing that people hear of, but like you can't really watch too much on it, right?
Yeah.
So let's put a flag in today, right? Today is, I'm not sure when the show's going to air, but it's the 16th of January, 2021. Kindred Spirits, the TV show, is supposed to be a multi-episode thing about the Bridgewater Triangle. It ain't going to happen. Okay.
I'm so glad this is Patreon, so I don't have to edit any of this. This is the best.
No, I love Amy Bruni is like one of the most amazing people I know. Like,
yeah.
Long way with her. Like, it has nothing to do with Kindred Spirits.
Yeah.
Capture the Bridgewater Triangle. One of my favorite TV shows is Fargo. Right? Love.
Okay. Yep.
The first 2 seasons of Fargo were like perfection.
Okay.
The guy who did that right, is doing that, I should say, wants to have a TV show. I think it was almost 2 years ago announced they're doing a TV show, which is kind of like Twilight Zone meets X-Files meets
Oh, snap.
Eureka, right?
Yeah.
About the Bridgewater Triangle.
Oh, man.
Not real stories, but these fictional stories that are all going to be intertwined with an overarching thing taking place in the Bridgewater Triangle.
That is so cool.
Ain't going to happen.
Ain't going to happen? Yeah, okay, cool. Don't get too excited.
There are
'cause it's not gonna
rumors.
happen. Yeah.
There are rumors that American Horror Story is going
no.
a season called The Bridgewater Triangle. You know where this is, I'm going to say, right?
Right. I know.
Right.
I know.
In the same way, I feel maybe because they're connected and linked, Pukwudgies will never be truly fully documented. So when you say, is there a documentary just about them? You know, so like there are little episodes that mention them. There are documentaries that might have a little segment on them.
Yep.
Aaron Cazayoux, who made the Bridgewater Triangle documentary, is the only person, probably because he's in the thick of it, he's from there, is the only person who's been able to document it, right?
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And it's one of those things where who knows more than I do about the subject, and how would I tackle a book? You know what I'm saying? Like when you try to comprehend how you would possibly cover what they are and what they mean, it's like trying to grab at mist, right? It's really hard to get the narrative. We can have a little storytelling session. I can tell you these stories and I can tell you these connections. To document it officially has always seemed to me near impossible. And I think that, like, regardless of how big they are, and you can go and you can watch these little 5-minute segments of, like, you know, creature fiction and
right.
What would happen if Pukwudgies took on Chupacabra? You know, but like a definitive exploration of it, I think, is near impossible. So there isn't a lot out there that you can like hold on to, except for these little snippets and some podcasts that get into it and talk about it. And it's really a matter of having to pick and search for these things.
Dude, that is so cool. Do you mind sharing the best way that everyone can follow you? I know your website, but just like kind of go over your like social media and all.
Yep, sure. So my radio show, my podcast is called Tripping on Legends.
Okay.
We go live on Facebook at facebook.com/Tripping on Legends every Tuesday from 8:30 to 10. It's cast at the same time on Midnight FM. So if you go to Midnight FM or you subscribe to Midnight FM, you can hear us live. If not, you can get the podcast anywhere where you get your podcasts.
That's awesome.
Spotify, which doesn't like me because I have videos, but Stitch or iTunes or Google Play or any of those things.
Yeah.
The website is trippingonlegends.com. Like you said, on IG, I am Spooky Tripping, and on Twitter, I am Spooky Balzano. Honestly, the best place to get everything you want, it really is kind of where everything filters into, is to Facebook. So facebook.com/legends is probably the way to follow us.
Awesome. Oh, man. Chris Balzano, this has been amazing. Christopher Balzano, like, thank you for coming on so much. This has been great. I think this is probably the best talk about the Pukwudgie you could ever get. I would encourage you someday to take it like, even though it might be hard and it might not like I think the book needs to be written. Like, I'm gonna encourage you to do it, but totally up to you, man. But like, thanks so much for coming on, dude.
Thank you very much for having me. I had a great time.
Awesome.